Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm not too sure if the format is going to work, but send me a little note if it's the wrong way, and I'll turn the camera up the other way. How are you today? I have spent quite a bit of brain time in this particular Parashah. It's one of those great, big, huge Parashah where you can find a lot in it, and sometimes I end up getting really deep into it. So let's have a look at some of the incredible things we've found here today. Alright, so I promised you Twilight, and Twilight it is, which I found out recently, according I think to Talmud, is when in the eastern sky, the top grey is the same as the bottom grey. So we're almost there. So here we go. This is Twilight. I'm calling this particular reflection Getting Back on Track. And I'm pretty sure you guys can understand that this is a place where we're in at the moment, a journey of each day, beginning with a single step. So let's have a look at Jacob and him getting back on track. So let's just catch up quickly. In the last Parashah, Jacob had stolen Esau's birthright and his inheritance, and he was fleeing in fear of his life from his brother. So let's I've got notes today. I don't normally use notes, bear with, okay, because I really want to get this right for you guys. So this is a very famous Torah portion, and even if you haven't read it, I bet you've heard of it, because it's the one that contains Jacob's ladder, where he has a dream and there's angels ascending and descending, and this is where he sleeps with a rock for a pillow, and in these visions he's out in the wilderness, he's out in nature, but he awakes after being alone and very, very feeling lost and seemingly disconnected from everything that he knows, very isolated. But when he awakes, there's something different. So let's see what's happened. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt alone? I'm going to read you 1 year, some comments, some history from just 1 year. It was just a year that came to mind. It was 1969. And Nobel Prize winner George Wald, in opposition to the Vietnam War, declared that at that particular time, humanity was a generation in search of a future. Hold on to that. Let's see where that goes. In the same year, a US plane was shot down by North Korea. Deadly race riots ripped apart Malaysia. Afro-American students and faculty protested in multiple universities. The murder of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were tried in the courts in America. John Lennon and Yoko Ono staged a bed-in for peace, to promote peace. And they also recorded the song Give Peace a Chance. The youngest woman elected to British Parliament, Bernadette Devil of Northern Ireland, exposed the discrimination against the Roman Catholics in Ireland. Winnie Mandela was placed in solitary confinement for 17 months, and she was detained under South Africa's Terrorism Act. The Gibraltar border with Spain was closed by dictator General Franco. A river in Cleveland, Ohio, caught fire due to the extreme levels of pollution in the water. New York's Stonewall Inn, an underground gay bar, was raided by police, and for 3 days 1,000 patrons rioted against the police, and the Stonewall Rebellion, as it came to be known, was considered the start of the homosexual rights movement. The modern start, I would say, very contemporary start. Cult leader Charles Manson and his disciples murdered 5 people, and the Zodiac murders were going on and went and completed. The New Left and extremist movements, as they were known by the FBI, became revealed, and President Reagan's plans to the disruption on Californian university campuses through psychological warfare using the FBI was revealed. Hi Carol, how are you? A Protestant group known as the Fraternal Boys led a parade in Northern Ireland, causing riots. Attacks on loyalist Catholics led to riots in Belfast. British troops were deployed into Northern Ireland. On August 15, Woodstock Music Festival occurred, and over 400,000 people went to seek peace through art. America at the time was drenched in racial unrest. King Idris was overthrown by a coup in Libya, and the new revolutionary government was led by Gaddafi. And that was 1 year. Just the highlights. From there, I'd like to take us to some individual challenges. People who seek to hurt us in the big scheme or in the personal scheme do so by disconnecting us from family, friends, independence, and our own self-esteem. Traumatized people feel afraid to connect. They've lost trust. They create barriers to protect themselves. Their mind and their body becomes a barrier, and problems occur. This further reduces their ability to connect and to heal. I'm using a word over and over. Connect. Let's sit with that one. You might wonder why Jacob is the most important person to commence the generations of Israelites, what would become the Israelites. Not Abraham, for example. But discussion shows that it's in the importance that he struggles, and he struggles over and over. And this is the human condition. And that is why, like our struggles, his story has a resonance for us. He longs in this particular Parashah for the time when he can return to his father's house. Have you felt that way? That you've lost the connection with someone, and what you really want inside is that time when you can actually return? So through the story of Jacob, who becomes renamed Israel, he who struggles with God, we share in this experience, we come to know that the deepest, darkest challenges are where we are most vulnerable, are where we get to find connection. So let me ask you another question. How do you remain connected when you feel 1,000,000 miles away? For Jacob, he found what he didn't know. He found a spiritual connection with the divine. To quote the Parashah, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." How many times have you thought that? That this was a particularly special moment, but you didn't realize it at the time. It was Jacob's intense vulnerability that gave him the courage to find connection with the sacred. And it happens to us when we find that particular place and allow ourselves to be open as well. 19th century American transcendentalist, poet, philosopher and essayist Henry David Thoreau, very particular name, pronunciation, was struggling from the death of his brother. He went out into the wilderness and he found connection through nature. His very famous work, Walden, illustrates his spiritual discovery, living 2 years in the wilderness and seeing that spiritual connection with nature exists. Thoreau was lost and he found connection. My friend Jen walks the beach each morning, rain, hail or shine, because there she finds peace, tranquility and connection. Another friend rides a bike. His body works. The wind is on his skin, in his face. The physics of his movement with the bike and the universe connects everything together, and he feels inner peace. And here's something where I would like to take you somewhere back to 1969, to the moon. You may recall that there was a lunar landing, very important one, the first one. Now these were people who were the most intensely physically distanced humans that ever existed. The most vulnerable, arguably. And in the broadcast that they sent back to the Earth, that was the most watched television broadcast at the time, they chose to read the Genesis portion. They chose to read the creation story. We've listened to little bits about what was going on in the world, and when they were preparing what they would say, they realized they couldn't talk about peace because there wasn't peace. They couldn't talk about many things that they explored because at that time, on the journey that the people on Earth were traversing, it was too raw. It was inappropriate. It wouldn't have been the positive message from this incredible journey. So instead they chose to read on the approaching lunar sunrise, where there was this tiny ball, blue ball, that was the Earth on a huge black background. The message that said And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. They chose to read about nature. The central journey of Jacob is his realization of oneness with all creation. What we recognize as monotheism, but often forget, includes us. Maimonides, the great 12th century Jewish philosopher, theologian, lawyer, who was living in Islamic Spain and Islamic Egypt during his lifetime, had the misfortune of having his brother drown at sea. He spent a year in depression. He was already a very greatly intellectual and educated man, but he emerged more enriched from this experience, more able to understand the nuances of life and the connections. He began to write, and he wrote his most famous Mishnah Torah. Informed by the great synthesis of intellectual life around him, he wrote, "We come to perfection by transforming the world that God has expressed out of his nature back into mind." Now, this is a pretty difficult concept, but let's unpack it a little bit. The world is a creation out of mind, received by mind. Nature to mind. The study of nature is one way to know the divine. If you read Maimonides, he will talk about the purity of intellect. He believed purity resides in the condition of the interior soul. Writing just 100 years later was St. Thomas Aquinas, who, informed by Maimonides and Aristotle, who also informed Maimonides, he wrote, "God is nature." Both these men were influenced by the learning around them and the Greeks that had gone before them, and they sought to synthesize that great question that we still have today, the question of faith and reason. Can it be something that lives together? For their efforts, they were declared heretical, their books were burned, they were abandoned as suspect and apostate, and then they were understood. Then they were embraced, canonized in the case of St. Thomas Aquinas, and read and regarded as brilliant theologians and philosophers throughout the world today. So in summary, I would like to say this. There are things we can know and things we cannot know. There are things we experience when we open ourselves to experience. We all seek what reason can do and what it cannot do. We all search for a sense of oneness and a sense of connection. On our journey, truth is what is reflected in reality. Truth is not what we impose on reality. We are all connected. We may not, like Jacob, know it. Recognizing divinity in our lives is allowing this connection to occur. The reciprocal flow of energy from expression to expressed allows us all to know the truth, emet, and allows us to say, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We are all one. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you very much for listening and watching tonight. Have a wonderful weekend.